Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jami.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives.
Welcome back to another episode of FitBody Lifestyle. I'm here with my partner in life, the incredible Papa Bear, and we are going to talk today about what do you do when it's showtime.
It's show day, and we are definitely in that mode right now in the world, or in our year. Shows are coming fast and furious every week, and working with all these athletes, we get the it's show day mindset in a big way. And what we want to do today is kind of walk you through what to expect on that day of the show. Every show is a little bit different. The setup of the show, the promoters, the venues, there's going to be differentials and all that part of the planning. But we wanted to at least kind of introduce this topic and give you some level of what to expect on show day.
Right. And I mean, our goal is, whether you've competed before or not, our goal is to really help you be prepared. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that we see happen when people aren't as prepared as they could be. So we're going to help you, hopefully, going forward, be more ready for whatever can come your way. Because even if you've competed before, every single show day experience is going to be different.
Right. And I think I love that you talked about being prepared versus being ready. And I have always differentiated being prepared versus being ready. So, the story behind that is simply, I'm going to give another story, which is, I think, being a parent. So when you are pregnant, you spend all that 9 months preparing for that child. And part of that preparation is your health, your doctor's visits, your nutrition. You might be preparing a room for the child. You might be preparing, you might be doing the great reveal. All that stuff goes into the preparation for the birth of that child. But when that child comes, you're not ready for that. No, nobody's ready for that. Every child is going to be a little bit different. Every child, our two children are markedly different. And when you are experiencing that in the moment, your preparations will help you, but there's no being ready for that, because being ready is actually being in that moment and that experience. The preparations for it will help you be better prepared for it, but being ready for it is something different. So if you're a first-time competitor, don't worry less about being ready, worry more about being prepared. And are you taking the proper steps to prepare yourself? Because when that day comes, and one of my favorite sayings is no plan survives first contact, you've got to, if you do have a plan though, you're going to be prepared to pivot, to shift, to do whatever you need to do to make that day successful. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that.
I completely agree. And so, I mean, I just like to dive into, how do we get prepared? So, once we're going to assume you've already chosen your show, you've decided what you're doing, prep and all of that. We're kind of leaving those things aside, really to kind of focus on now, how do I be prepared for the day of the show? And first and foremost, please, please, please go to the promoter's website and make sure you know what's going on. Make sure that you're planning ahead. If you're traveling to the show, make sure you're getting there in plenty of time. We've had a lot of issues lately with flights being canceled or delayed, things like that. You also want to think about being there in time so that you're not holding water or, overly stressed. If you can give yourself an extra night so that you can get settled in, that's really nice. If it's a local show, that's a little easier, obviously, because you're already at home. So that piece doesn't necessarily apply. But if you're having to book travel, look at that promoter's website, find out what time do I need to be at the check-ins. Is there a seminar? If there is a seminar, I really recommend you go. Even if you've competed for a long time, you never know. I mean, a lot of times there's going to be new things introduced. I mean, I learn something every time, and I get to be exposed, or even just networking and, meeting people. It's a lot of fun. So if there's a seminar, planning for that. Just be careful not to overwhelm yourself with other activities, kind of be able to focus on the show. I know sometimes we like to bring friends and family, and maybe they want to go sightseeing, or they want to go to a dinner, or they want to do other things. And I've seen that get people in trouble too. So, first I'd say go to that promoter's website, review the schedule, make sure that, you've got plenty of time for everything you need to do while you're there, and that you're not overwhelming yourself with other activities.
And I do think that looking far out into that show, so if you've identified the show, look at that contest promoter show at the point that you have decided to do that show. In fact, that may be part of your decision-making process about whether that's the right show for you. And we've talked about this in another podcast where we talk about the location being so critical for you. Make sure that you're looking at that contest promoter's website, both to know what is going to be expected and then start that planning process early. We just had an athlete at a show that was traveling on a Thursday to get there for a Friday check-in, and their flight was canceled. They were supposed to fly out at something like 12 or 2 o'clock on that Thursday, and the flight kept getting moved back, and then finally the flight was canceled, and they did not fly out until the very next day. And that's something that you won't be able to control, and I'm not telling you can, but also think about what can you control. So is your first show selection within driving distance? Is that going to make it more accessible to you, or a better fit for your flexibility? If you do experience those travel difficulties, this is where preparing yourself in terms of what you pack, in terms of how you go about, planning for that. You cannot plan for every contingency, but flight cancellations are a normal part of travel. I think normal is the right word. I don't know, maybe abnormal. I don't know what the right word is, but making sure that you've thought about that is really going to help you deal with it if it does occur. So making sure that you have enough meals with you, making sure that you have a contingency plan that, okay, if this flight gets canceled, can I go back home? Can I do something else to pass that time until I can get out on the flight?
Right. The other thing I would look at when you're reviewing the website, make sure you know where everything is going to be. Sometimes the meeting ahead of time or the check-ins are in a different location than the actual show is. If they are all in the location when their show is, and you have access to the stage, that's kind of a great opportunity to be able to walk the stage, see what it's going to feel like, kind of get a sense of the room, things like that. So if you're able to do that, that's really nice. I would just make sure you know where is everything going to be during this show weekend.
Especially if it's in a location you've never been to before.
Exactly. And, a lot of times they do have some of the events in the host hotel, and then others might be in a convention center, or it all might be in the host hotel. And this is going to also help you decide, do I want to get a room at the host hotel? How close is that going to be to the venue where, you actually have the event going on? I know sometimes people will want to do like an Airbnb, or maybe they want to do a different hotel if the host hotel doesn't have a full kitchen or something like that, which is fine. But just be careful, because we've seen in certain situations, I'll just give the example in Pittsburgh, where, which were there for a couple of the Masters Nationals, the North Americans, the Pittsburgh Pro, but specifically for the Masters Nationals and North Americans, where the location is, it's great. It's all in the host hotel, but you need to book this far in advance because it gets booked out. And a lot of the other hotels are on the other side of the river, and there's a lot of one-way streets. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of those kinds of things going on. So if possible, I like to be walkable to the event center. That way you don't get into any kind of trouble with traffic or, whatever. We've seen this happen where there's a marathon going on or something, and you can't, and then all of a sudden somebody has missed their class, So these are all considerations that you want to do ahead of time. You don't want to be last minute panicking. So really figuring out what's the lay of the land, where I'm going to be, where am I staying, where are all the events that I'm going to have going on. And that's going to really help you be prepared.
And in terms of the host hotel, something else that you want to take into consideration, I think you would agree with this, is where's the hair and makeup going to be? If you are working with a coach, where's your coach going to be? Is your coach going to be at the host hotel or somewhere else? And how accessible? I don't know that you need to stay there if your coach is staying there, or that you need to stay there if your hair and makeup is there. But it is something that you want to plan for. And just like you said, and we've been to several shows where the marathon is a great example. We were at another show where there was another like 3 or 4 events. I think it was Vegas or something, which there's always events. It wasn't Vegas. It was somewhere back east. There were like 3 or 4 major events going on in the city at the time. And so Uber drivers were very difficult to come by. It was a lengthy wait. And again, that just is something that you want to prepare yourself for, because what I can assure you, and this goes back to that statement I made, is no plan survives first contact. So no matter how much you plan and prepare, there are going to be contingencies that usually will occur. I shouldn't say usually. There are going to be contingencies that will occur, and you're just going to have to be able to deal with that. But the more you have a plan, the more you're able to pivot into a separate thing. So maybe, okay, if I know that I'm going to stay at an Airbnb this 2 miles away, is it worth it to get a car, a rental car, if you can fit that in your budget? What's the travel time back and forth? Do I have somebody to drive? Because even if you get a rental car and you're going to a hotel, you got to plan for, well, I got to park that car, I got to valet that car. So again, I think the other part that we would talk about is budgeting for that show, and making sure that you know what you're getting into. So what's the cost of the host hotel? What, right. And so the rental car, am I factoring that in? How much does that add to my expenses versus how much does an Uber back and forth, depending on how many times you need to travel?
Yeah, and we did an episode on the budgeting and that kind of thing that's really great to go if that's something you're wanting to explore as well. With the Ubers, I would really recommend that you schedule them in advance, and that way that does mitigate a little bit of the issue, because you're not having to hope that something's available when you're needing to go, and especially on show morning when you're like you're talking about, where you've got to go in for hair and makeup and things like that. Something else to think about is the tan. I really love the DIY. We're actually going to have somebody on an episode coming up here soon that's from ProTan, that's going to talk a little bit about the options of getting sprayed versus DIY. But just for the purposes of show day, what I wanted to talk about is that I like the DIY because now you are managing the schedule of it, and you're also managing the look of it. Whereas if you get sprayed, you are going to be at the whim of their schedule. And a lot of times what ends up happening is they're going to give you a window you can come in. And depending on the size of the show, sometimes I've seen a long line waiting. So that might throw off your timing and your schedule. Whereas if you're doing your own tan, you can start it, you can do it at your own leisure, in your hotel room or at home if it's a local show. It really just makes your scheduling a lot easier. I know some people will do their own hair, and some people even are good enough to do their own makeup. If you're not really good at makeup, I would practice it ahead of time if you're planning on doing your own.
Even if you are good at makeup, right? It's a different kind of makeup.
Right.
And I don't mean the different kind of product. It's just a different look.
Well, both.
Yeah, well, it's true. It's just a different look. And if you can be a very talented makeup artist, but if you're not a stage makeup artist, there's a difference there in terms of the shading, in terms of the color selections, in terms of what works, what doesn't work. So, booking makeup is some people we have several athletes who are really good at it.
Right. We have quite a few of our athletes that do their own, and it's really nice because now, again, you can schedule it in. You want to give yourself plenty of time, but you do have a little bit more flexibility than obviously if you book with somebody. In that case, I know some of the artists don't give you your time until the night before, right, or a couple nights before if you're lucky. So you're having to kind of work around the schedule that they're giving you. So these are all things we do need to be able to pivot. So we want to have a plan, we want to have a schedule, and at the same time, we're going to have to be prepared for whatever's thrown our way. I would definitely, if you can book with somebody who gives you a time, that's really nice. It's going to help you be more prepared. But if not, then, being ready and able to do it. You and I, of course, will sit down with the athletes all the night before when we do their final check-ins the night before and create a schedule for them for the next morning that includes, what time are they going to wake up? What time are they going to eat? Hair, makeup, tan, all the things they need to do prior to prejudging, even planning for how much sleep. So if you end up with a 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. makeup time, well, you're going to need to make sure you're getting to bed earlier that night. So you have to plan for that as well, and prepare whoever you're traveling with to support you in that.
Right. And that I'm so glad you brought that up, because look, if you have a 3 a.m. makeup call and you're traveling with somebody, if you have kids or, a friend or something, make sure and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but, if you're a parent and you're traveling with your children, which is completely understandable and can work, just plan around that, okay? Sometimes it may be very beneficial, especially if your children are younger, to get a separate room for them, and for your husband or wife or whomever's traveling with you, just to make sure that you have, if you're getting up for a 3 a.m. wake up to make your makeup, it's just. You just want to be aware of that, and then again, that goes into your budget for the show, and just something else to take into consideration. But I was thinking also about the makeup in terms of scheduling that as far in advance, and I don't know that is there a specific advantage, do you think, to scheduling that out?
There is. So first off, each makeup artist only has so many slots. So you may not get a slot with the makeup artist that you would really like to be with if you wait too long. The other thing is typically they do schedule people based on when they booked. So whoever booked the furthest out usually gets the most optimal time, and whoever waits till the last minute sometimes will get the not so great times.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So if you can book in advance, I would definitely do that, and that way you will make sure you get the artist you want and hopefully get a better time.
And the artist will adjust that schedule on show day to a certain extent based on where the divisions are going, which divisions are going first. So they prioritize based on the schedule of the show. A lot of times the promoters will publish what order the divisions will go in. Sometimes they will not. Sometimes they will just publish, hey, we're going to do all the men and then we're going to do the women. And you don't know whether the bikini is going to be first or last, whether wellness is going to be first or last. Bikini we've seen is usually last. But occasionally there's bikini then wellness last. I don't think we've ever seen a show where bikini, well, I shouldn't say ever. I don't think we've seen a show in recent memory where bikini was the first division to go when they get to the girls. Have you seen
No,
that? Yeah.
no.
So,
Yeah, right. And what you're saying is absolutely true. And finding that out, that's why going to the meeting and going to the seminar, a lot of times they're going to go over that. They're going to tell you what side you're coming out on. They're going to tell you a lot of those pieces of information that are going to help you prepare for the next day. And really, truly, that's why, I encourage people, like, if every opportunity you get to make sure that you know what's going on, show up and be there. We were this past weekend at a show and we helped out with the seminar, and it was, I don't know, there was probably like 30 people maybe there. And then we went outside in the line to do the registration. There were hundreds of people out there. And so many people missed out on that opportunity. And then, people show up late or miss their class or, aren't prepared or something like that, and it's like, if you would have come to the seminar, that might not have happened. So, if there's an opportunity, why not? Usually the judges are there. You're going to get to hear from the judges what they're expecting, what they're wanting to see. Like, you're going to learn so much. So that's why I'm saying, like, look at that schedule in advance. Make sure you don't miss out on any opportunities.
And I will say that is so important. You had said this earlier about you may learn something, and I often think a lot about learning, and especially if you think you know what you're doing, or maybe you do know what you're doing, whether you think you do or you do, you can always get one piece of information, and oftentimes it's that one piece of information that's going to be the difference maker in your experience about whether it's good or bad. Oh, I didn't know that, or that's something I need to factor into my planning. So I just think part of it is, and I think we're going to do another episode about check your ego at the door, and one of those things that I think we'll cover in that is, we will cover in that is, don't assume that you know everything. The more, in fact, we talk about this a lot, the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. You get that one piece of information at the show, and I'm going to give you an example that was evident at a recent show where we were able to get in there. The stage had a couple of dead spots on it. And by dead spots, I mean areas of the stage that would sink down. And this happens from time to time. It's not intentional. It just happens in the construction of the stage. And oftentimes the promoters are not able to go back and correct that. So there's a dead spot. And a lot of times I'll move the tape in the box around that and work with the photographer around that. But you would not know that unless you went to the seminar or unless you went to the athlete meeting that night before. And honestly, the people that were best prepared for that are the people who took the time to walk up on stage. Several athletes brought their shoes, which was, and again, best practice for preparation. Bring your shoes, because you never know when you're going to need them. And if you can, walk the stage to see how much give, how much bite, how much you're going to work on that show day. And I'll just give you the military analogy here, which is there's something in the military that you learn as a platoon leader called the 8-step troop leading procedures. And the last one of those steps is actions on the objective. And as a minimum, you want to rehearse everything. But if you can't rehearse the whole operation, you definitely want to rehearse the actions on the objective when you're executing. And I think about that a lot when I see people walking the stage, is they are living into that principle of, I am going to walk the stage because I want to create as much as possible that awareness of what this is going to be like on the day of the show. It's the reason when we check people in during the show or the day before, we put lights in our room to create as much as possible that stage experience.
And a box on the floor.
That's right, and a box on the floor, so that you have that stage experience. And that's, I mean, this in all of our pictures, so we're not giving away a trade secret or anything, but we want to give our athletes that train as you fight mindset, which is, I want to know what to expect on the show day, because the more you rehearse that day, the better able you are. And as a related topic, and I know I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but when you're practicing your posing, if you're not practicing your facial expression or the projection of the energy and the attitude that you want to convey, you're missing a big step in your posing practice. You want to pose in your practice the same way that you're going to present on stage.
And I used to joke around about I was going to go pee on the stage. So, and I mean, you're kind of marking your territory, but I mean, that really is like, that's part of it, is like, once you've walked it, it's exactly what you're describing. Now you've had that experience, you feel more prepared. You're not going to be as, nervous or as shocked when you step up on the stage for the game time, because you've already been there. You've already walked it. So I definitely really encourage that. And then I kind of want to jump into all the things we need to bring with us to make sure we're prepared backstage and that we're prepared for, the day before and the day of show. One of the funniest things that I see happening a lot is people not having enough food with them. So, I do, of course, prepare athletes and let them know, we're going to be doing a carb up. You're going to need, more of your carb source, and you need to know what that's going to be, if you're, whether it be your self-coached or your coach, find out what kind of carb sources you're going to use, fat sources, protein sources, things like that. And then be over prepared. You know what I mean? You don't want to be trying to scuffle around and find things because you didn't have enough rice cakes, or
borrowing food from another competitor who doesn't have enough either.
Right. And if you get into a pinch, I mean, I had one athlete a couple weekends ago who did not bring enough carbs. Her body really sped up, and we were having to feed her more and more and more. And so she ended up having to go down to the Vietnamese restaurant down the way and have them make her a bunch of orders of rice. So she had more rice, which, again, it's fine. If something happens, you got to be able to pivot and roll with it. And at the same time, like, be prepared, have extra with you. You can get the types of like rice packs and things you can even microwave, so they don't even have to be pre-cooked if you want to do that, but just have more than you think you're going to need. And I would say this is true for every single thing we're going to talk about in terms of what you're packing and bringing. Bring more than you think you're going to need. Over prepare.
Bring more tan. Bring an extra set of shoes if you can. Bring an extra competition suit if you have it. That's not required. That is definitely not required. And if you have an extra posing suit, it doesn't hurt you to bring it.
We've seen connectors break at shows. I mean, things can happen. So you're absolutely right. And we've seen shoes break it. I mean, we've been running around looking to borrow a pair of shoes for somebody because their strap broke or something happened. So no, you're absolutely right. If you can, over prepare.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you would over prepare. Oh, bring a blanket with you. I know a lot of people don't think about that. We shameless plug, I guess we sell FitBody Fusion blankets, but it's really not to plug that. It's really more, a lot of the backstage areas can be cold. Some can be hot. So some athletes have these little personal fans that they bring with them to keep themselves hot, or to keep themselves cool. Yeah, not hot. But just, these are the things that you want to kind of think about, is what is going to make your experience the best, and think about the things that you would need. It's almost like camping. And, in the military, we have something called a pre-execution checklist, where we go down, and I can tell you there's times when we were preparing for an operation, and we would have all of our gears spread out, and we would go through it one by one and make sure I have this, I have this, I have this. We're going to prepare a little business card that has those show day reminders on them, just to give you those mental checks, those mental cues that you are prepared for that day, that you've taken the things that you need to do. We see the tanning thing a lot, where if you are a DIY tanner, people don't bring the show glaze, or they don't bring enough competition tan or super dark tan from the Pro Tan product line. It does not hurt to have extra with you. And that may mean that you have to check a bag, which if you're going to a show, and you're probably going to have to check a bag anyway.
Right.
Realistically.
Right.
And
most likely
when you're
checking a
packing
bag.
those things, by the way, make sure you pack them in a couple levels of Ziploc bags, because they can explode, and you
The
don't
tan
want
products. Yeah. And what you're saying is absolutely true. And I would really encourage having a checklist for packing, and then a checklist for show day.
Yeah.
When you're packing, something I would think about, and I love that you brought up the blanket. When you're backstage, most of the time it's cold. Occasionally it's hot, but like you said, most of the time it's cold. Plus, you don't want to be on your feet the whole time. There's a lot of hurry up and wait on show day. So, we got to get there, because, we don't know exactly what time we're going on, unless the pros typically know what time. But as an amateur, you don't usually know what time you're going to go on. So you've got to be there plenty early, because you don't want to risk, missing your class, but that might mean sitting and waiting for hours. So that's why, I said, have extra food with you always. Have something you can lay down on the floor, so that you can lay down, so that you're not standing up on your feet. We want to make sure we're not getting any inflammation. If you could prop your feet up, that's going to be ideal. So, we don't want to have bags that are going to be on our shoulders that are going to potentially mess up our tan, that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to bring a rollerboard bag for backstage, and that acts really nicely as something to prop your feet on. So you've got your blanket. If you want to bring a pillow, that's always nice too. I mean, make yourself comfy. You want to be comfy on show day and be able to kind of relax.
Yeah, it's your day. You've worked hard for this moment. So you've heard us, I think a lot of people have heard us say this phrase before, which is control the controllables. And the controllables for you are to prepare, to do a checklist for the items that you need to do on show day, and then execute on that. And the reason why we're telling you to prop up your feet, just in case, I think probably everybody knows this, but maybe not, is to keep the fluid from settling in your legs. That we see a lot, and it's so funny we say this, it seems so basic, because we give that advice all the time, but I am always observing people at shows, and they are just walking around. They're walking around in their heels. And it's like, you're going to be in those heels a lot today. Is this the time that you really want to create that? And how much inflammation are you introducing into your body because you're walking around when you don't need to be, when you really need to be relaxing?
Right. So we want to keep cortisol levels low. We want to keep inflammation down. So yeah, the more you can just relax and just kind of chill out, the better. So we've got our rollerboard bag, nothing on the shoulders. We've got our blanket, maybe a pillow for backstage if we want to have that. We've got all of our food packed with us. We always want to make sure that we remember our competitor number. That's another one I see people forget a lot. So put that on your list for show day. Make sure you've got that. Your extra heels, your extra suit if you have one and are going to bring it. And then
loose fitting clothing for the night before the show, and when you travel there anyway, you want to bring sheets. Your own sheets, because and a lot of the hotels will actually have you sign a waiver that if you get tan on the sheets, that you're responsible for that.
So bring sheets and towels,
right?
Yes.
And
I would get dark ones,
dark sheets and dark towels. Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. I mean, that's I when I go to shows, I rarely bring anything that's not black, because by the time I'm done and I'm not competing, I'm covered in tan.
Yeah.
So
or makeup.
Well, all of the above.
Yeah.
So something you can cover up, or something you can easily throw over you is really nice to have. You had mentioned the show shine, a little bit of tan touch up just in case you mess up your tan. Other things that you might want to think about are a cup to bring to the restroom if you're a female. The males don't have this issue so much, but as us ladies, we've got to make sure that we're not messing up our tan when we're using the restroom. So taking the bottom out of a cup. There's also some devices. I think there's one called a Go Girl. They're really designed for camping. That those kinds of things can help too if you're a little bit more splashy when you go to the to the restroom. But you also have to watch out for the toilets, the self-flushing toilets, because sometimes they go and they splash you as well. So
we've seen that happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you want to be able to touch up your tan, and make sure somebody checks that for you before you go out.
And a small point, but along that topic, before you go to the bathroom at whatever toilet you're at, flush it first. And which, even if it's clear, the reason that to that is exactly what you're talking about is that if the toilet that you're at splashes, you want to know that before you can flush it afterwards. But if it's a self-flushing toilet, you're not going to have that choice. It's just going to flush on you. So just be careful about that stuff, because we do see pee lines a lot. It's I don't know if that's the right term for it, but it's the term that I'll use. So as we're talking about also show day prep, think about other incidentals that you may want. If you are a music listener and that's your process, make sure you have your headphones, make sure that your phone is charged, make sure you have a backup battery for your phone. We see that, I shouldn't say make sure, just things to think about. That backup battery can save you a lot. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that jewelry. Make sure that you've identified the jewelry you're going to wear and have that. We've seen athletes go, and the good news about jewelry is that if you were to forget all your jewelry, it's not really going to affect your placing. The jewelry is really more for you, and it does add to the presentation.
Yeah.
But it's not going to hurt you if you don't have it.
Yeah, a few other things that I would think about, even if you're getting your makeup done, I would have your lip color that you're going to wear, because obviously you're going to be eating, drinking, doing other things. So you want to make sure that you can touch up your lip color. And then I would also have either a powder or some of the oil strips with you, so you can dab that, make sure that the makeup's looking really pretty before you go out. So that's one good thing to do. Eyelash glue, sometimes the eyelashes will start to come loose. So having that with you is a really good idea.
Needle and thread.
A needle and thread, right? I mean, if something breaks, that gives you that opportunity. I mean, it's really, I love that you said camping, because it kind of is like you want to be prepared for just anything that could happen. The
Band-Aids. I forgot about Band-Aids. We needed Band-Aids this weekend. And thankfully, I had some because I was thinking about that. But we bring an extra show buff from the Pro-Tan products. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were good. Go. A little pair of scissors or clippers even can be helpful for clipping, stray strands on a bikini or on your posing suit. I'm trying to think of some
nail glue.
These things. Nail clippers are really handy because they operate as little scissors. But if you were to chip a nail or something, man, having a pair of nail clippers will really save your day. A nail file. These are some of the things to just start thinking about in terms of what could happen. What did I do to prepare for this moment? What could happen, and how would I then pivot, and what would I need to do that?
Yeah. A couple little tricks on a couple things I was just thinking about. If you're doing you should be doing salt on show day, especially if you're really ready for your show. I really love the little salt packets. Yep. Those are great because you can just throw them in your bag, and then you don't have to worry about measuring and things like that. So that's a really good idea. The other thing that's really cool is if you're doing like jelly or honey or something else, you could get those pre-measured packs. It's a lot less messy than trying to like use a big bottle that's sticky and messy and things like that. So those things are good. I mean, I know this sounds kind of funny, but like if you're doing rice cakes, which a lot of us, do rice cakes on show day, we have had situations where people are like, I'll just get them when I get there. And then all the rice cakes are sold in a perimeter around the event.
Like a 5-mile radius, we are out of rice cakes. Yes.
Yeah, for real. I mean, again, that's one of these things where just being as prepared as you possibly can, having everything ready to go, it's going to take so much stress off of you. And then you're going to be able to relax and enjoy the process. I would just be ready early for everything. You might even want to have, if you like crossword puzzles, or if you like,
Sudoku, whatever.
Yeah, because you're going to be sitting and waiting quite a bit. And I mean, it's nice if you know other people. I mean, that's one of the things, like being part of a team is really fun, because a lot of times, while we're sitting and waiting for hours, people are kind of entertaining each other, helping each other. If they need, a hair clip, bring hair clips, bring a hairbrush, make sure you've got things to touch that up too, because we didn't talk about hair, we talked about makeup. So having kind of everything you could need, and then something to kind of keep your mind busy so that you're not stressing while you're there, and you can just kind of relax and enjoy the process. So I think, we pretty much covered everything about what you need to bring for show day. So do you want to start talking about a little bit about kind of the schedule of show day?
All right, so we've gone through a lot of the preparation. So now it's show day, and you have arrived at the venue. And as we talked about, arrive early. So if the show starts at 10, for example, and your division is last, should you show up late or later than 10 o'clock? Or what are the advantages and disadvantages, I guess, that we can talk through?
Well, I know we talked a lot about being there at the seminar because these are great places to ask this question. What time should my division show up? And we also talked about making sure you're looking at the website so you know what time things are starting in the order that they're going in. You want to make sure you're planning your whole morning around that so that you're ready to go. Your bag is packed, your hair and makeup is done, you've got everything that you need. I would always err on the side of caution and be there early rather than late. And I have seen people miss their classes, and guys, this is not worth it. I'd rather you sit there for 2 or 3 hours than miss your class when you have worked so hard to get there. It's heartbreaking. So, some of these shows go really fast.
Yep.
And so a lot of times, there aren't as many people in some of the divisions, and that's where I've seen people get into trouble. I actually had some athletes that were competing and they got through all the divisions, and her division was the last one, and they got through all of them in 15 minutes. So she got there 20 minutes after and already missed her class because she was in the A class. She was in the shorter class.
And they're among the things that are worst in a show experience. That is number one, without question. You've spent weeks preparing, months, years, your life, whatever, preparing for the show. You don't want to miss your class. And so when you think about the inconvenience of being there earlier and having to wait versus the inconvenience or the regret of missing your class, well, you can't undo that. You just can't undo that.
And even if you don't miss your class, you don't want to be rushed.
Right.
And then your cortisol levels spike. I mean, you've been with me at a show where, I have plenty of time. And then next thing you know, I'm going in and my class is on stage and I'm hopping on one foot, putting my heel on and running out on the stage. I didn't get a chance to pump up, eat my pump up food. I was shaky. I was stressed. Like, that was not my best that I could put up there. And boy, did I learn my lesson, so I was lucky I even got on the stage. But, that's just something we don't want to see happen. So, I would rather see you just show up when the show, be ready when things start, but the nice thing is if you do go to the seminar, and it is a bigger show where it's, especially at the national show, sometimes, if you're in the tall division and, you're going last, it could be, 4 or 5, 6 more hours. This is where being prepared, though, and having extra meals with you, having your water with you that you have measured out, like, you want to be prepared to be there for the whole day, just in case.
That's right. And that is really kind of the bottom line up front on this is be prepared to be there the whole day. Bring enough food, get there early. Some of the backstage areas are limited, so the promoters may not want you in the backstage until your division is getting ready. Sometimes they have a separate green room where athletes can congregate. At worst, there's going to be some place where you can camp for a little bit and chill out before the show. So I've seen athletes in the audience watching the show, which is fine. If that's it is really more about you being where you need to be when you need to be there, so that you're able to do what you came to do, which is to get on stage and present yourself. So let's go to this now. You're at the show, you're backstage. You are chilled out, camped out, you're preparing yourself mentally, emotionally for this. And one thing I would tell you to think about too is be mindful about what gets in your head in terms of the noise around it. So that might not be the best day to get on Instagram. That might not be, and everybody's different. So I'm not telling you don't do it. I'm just telling you, think about how you're framing your mental set right there. I know that some athletes will look at other athletes and think, "Oh my God, they're going to beat me or whatever." If that stuff is going to get in your head, don't do it, because it's going to affect how you present on stage. So as you're backstage or you're in the area, just think about what influences you and what's going to put you in that happy state of mind. Because when you hit that stage, it's about you. You are not on the stage with anybody else at that moment for your individual presentation. It's you. It's your day. It's your show. Make it that way. So cut out those influences that may affect you negatively. Instagram, maybe some people are fine with it. If you're looking at puppy videos or cat videos or something, that's fine. But if you're trolling or I shouldn't say trolling, if you're surfing and looking for other competitors or whatever, that can sometimes put a negative thought in your head. Other people are very good with it, but you, so do what works best for you. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, that I feel like that's a really great piece of advice, and you know yourself, and that also includes the people you're surrounding yourself with. So, I have had situations where I have an athlete, and maybe another athlete is kind of poking at them a little bit or kind of putting things in their head or whatever. And, whether it's intentional or not, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you just got to protect your mindset. So sometimes, if you've got people that are really positive and fun and uplifting, cool, like visit and hang out and that kind of thing, talk about things other than the show. That way you can just kind of relax. If you don't have those people, that's why, sometimes popping those earphones in, maybe just laying down, meditating, closing your eyes. Or like you said, I mean, I love to watch like little kid videos or cat videos, like sometimes just to kind of like let my mind just relax and not, just you want the input to be things that are relaxing. The other thing though is, especially if you have headphones in or something, or if you're laying down, closing your eyes, you need to be able to hear the expediters, especially as it's getting closer. And I have seen situations where people are doing that and they don't hear that they need to be lined up or they need to be getting glazed or whatever that situation is. So just be aware of what's going on from a timing standpoint, who's on stage, who's next, just so you're prepared and you're not missing your calls or your cues, because it drives them crazy when they're looking for people they can't find.
That is really good advice. And we've talked about, I've seen athletes who missed the call because the expediter came around and they just had their headphones on and they just weren't paying attention. So I do think that's really good. And I think we talked about this before. I know you talked about it, but I want to just go back and emphasize it, is when you're packing for show day, make sure you pack that number. If at the check-in process, they've given you a wristband to wear, make sure you have that accounted for. Make sure you have that on, or a badge or whatever it is going to do, because you don't want to walk all the way to the venue and figure out, oh my God, I forgot my athlete number, or I forgot my wristband or my badge, and now I got to go back to the room to get it. And especially if you're cutting things close on the time frame, or the show is moving faster than anticipated. So that's just one of those items to be prepared for. So anyway.
And I was just going to add to that. And if worst case it happens, and it does happen, do not panic.
Right.
They have encountered this before. They can make you a makeshift number if they have to. Obviously, the goal is to be prepared and not have that happen. But listen, at the end of the day, we've all forgotten something somewhere. It happens. So if worst case something like that happens, or you forget something, take a pause. Look for somebody who's working for the show. Ask if they can help you. If you forget something like your rice cakes or something else, like just ask some of your neighbors or people that are hanging out around. You'll be surprised. People are usually pretty helpful. And I mean, I've been amazed at like just how helpful people will be when somebody forgot something. So obviously, like, we want you to be prepared. We don't want that situation to happen. But if it does, first of all, don't panic. We don't want to spike cortisol. Just take a breath and figure it out.
So you're sitting down, you're watching, paying attention to what's going on with the show. They hit the division just before yours, which in bikini is usually figure, that goes before bikini. And if you're in a women's division, then they'll get through the men's divisions. More often than not, what we see is they do novice, then true novice, then novice, then masters, then open. That's usually what we see and we encounter, but it may be different. And again, this is part of the going to the athlete meeting to figure out what in the check-in process to make sure that you understand the progression of events. So they call your division, or they tell you we'd like bikini A to start getting ready. You want to, at that point where they're asking your division to get ready, make sure that you're a little bit ahead of that timeline, because you want to time your pump up food and your pump up in sufficient time that when you're hitting the stage, those carbs are right in your muscles, that they're as full as they can be, and that you pump them up in the way that you need to get the best presentation on stage. So our guidelines are, we want you to eat that pump up food 30 to 40 minutes before you're on stage, and then we want you to do the pump up 15 to 20 minutes before you're on stage. So those are just things to factor into your timeline.
Right, and typically, and again, every show is a little bit different, but typically when they start calling you to go for glue and glaze, that's usually a good time to go ahead and eat your pump up food, get glued and glazed, and then start your pump up.
Right.
So usually that gives you enough time. Make sure we didn't talk about packing your bands.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So for your pump up, make sure you've also got bands for that in your bag. I will say I've lost a band. So, I mean, I don't think, I would, get anything super expensive. You could even get those little inexpensive, like little packs of bands and things like that. A lot of times because we throw down our bands and go up on stage and come back, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. So, I mean, just being prepared, for that as well.
Yeah, I think the bands that are the most effective are the little tubular bands with or without the handles. There's some other power bands, but some of the regular, like the rubber band looking ones.
Maybe put your name on them.
Maybe put your name on them. Some of the rubber band looking ones are the thicker ones. I would not. Those are less. You're going to have to pack more of them, and the usability of those to do your pump up is less so than those tubular bands or the thinner circumference or diameter bands that are a little bit more flexible for you. We've had some athletes who, we have one in particular I was thinking about, that she takes a 25-pound plate with her because that's what she likes to do her pump up with, and which is fine. And that's her process, and that's what she feels comfortable with. We've had athletes take dumbbells, 5 and 10-pound dumbbells backstage because that's what they're comfortable with. Again, that's fine, but just make sure that and this is part of that camping analogy camping analogy that we talked about, is you're going to have to carry it. So if you're comfortable carrying all that stuff, some athletes will bring a mirror with them backstage. Some athletes will bring a curling iron or other product with them. We talked about brushes and stuff. So these are just the things. If you pack it, you're going to have to carry it. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, having a mirror is a really, really good idea. A light. A light
can be really helpful.
We bring a light all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So having those kinds of, these are kind of like little extras that you don't absolutely have to have, but that are really, really helpful to have. And then, as far as the pump up, I was going to mention that there's one little trick that I've used before, which is using a gallon jug of water. And that's your, and then if you're tracking your water, it's heavy. So you can actually use that for your pump up in a pinch. It's
a good trick.
Yeah, a little trick. And I mean, that way it's something that you aren't going to have to carry with you and carry home like you would a small dumbbell. So I've used that before, especially if you can get a gallon jug that has a handle on it, and then you can use that, for your shoulder presses or, whatever, if you want to do that. So there's always fun in ways to kind of like, work this out. I do with one of my athletes, I'll help her do her hip thrust I'll put the blanket that she uses to lay down and I'll hold her hips and let her, use that to push against me. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and if you do end up getting into a situation where you don't have something or you need something, don't be afraid to get creative. I think the most important thing with show day is being able to be flexible, be resilient, let the water roll off your back.
Yep.
If somebody says something you don't like, sometimes the expediters get frustrated and they can be a little snippy, things like that. Most of the time they're really, really great, but there's always, you never know. Everybody's in their own.
Whenever I've seen the expediters get snippy, it's because some athlete behaved poorly relative to them and put them in a bad mood.
Right, but then you might get on the other side of that.
Yeah. And so honestly, remembering that, hey, we're all human and respecting each other, that's a really good practice. And I was just thinking about being observant in what you're seeing around you. That's both for the call times, but also see what other people are doing to prepare, because you might learn something with that. And be mindful of the good idea fairy, which when the good idea fairy lands on your shoulder, it may say, hey, that 25-pound plate that athlete would be really helpful for you, it may not work for you, okay? So not every idea is one that you need to engender or adopt, but it is something that to be aware of, because maybe something can help you. You see some athlete doing something that does help them, and maybe that will help you as well. So we're at that point where, okay, we've called for glue and glaze. We're going to eat our pump up food. We're going to go get glaze then, and the glaze is just that little light coat of oil that you want to get. Some athletes will do it themselves. Some people will use the show people to use it. You don't
Have gloves.
That's right, rubber gloves. Very, very helpful. I'm glad you covered that. Hair tie is not a bad idea to have just as a backup,
or a clip, to get your hair out of the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've eaten your pump up meal. You've gone to glaze. Too much oil is too much. Not enough oil will dull your lines on stage. So you want to get that right amount. And it's a range for everybody. So depending on whether your skin is dry or not, you'll figure out what you need. But make sure that it's evenly spread. We've seen people with really shiny spots and really dead spots. That's another reason why having a light backstage can really help you. So you've gotten glue and glaze now, and we're at that time to pump up. So I don't know if you want to cover pump up and then getting on stage from there.
Right. I mean, with the pump up, it's really going to depend on what you need to emphasize. I mean, we have athletes that have a little bit bigger shoulders, and we don't want to over pump them because then it throws off their balance top to bottom. And we may have another athlete that's the opposite, that's got, a lot of muscle in the lower body, and we need that upper body to be nice and pumped. So you need to already know ahead of time, like, what do you need to pump for your body? When you go up for prejudging, the biggest thing is just have fun, enjoy yourself. You should already have been doing all of your practice and be ready for it. So go up there, smile, look at the judges, show your confidence, just really have fun with it. Couple tips for, stage. The whole time you're on stage, if you can see the judges, they can see you. So if you're waiting to go next, you want to be already standing with your pose, so that your lines are in the right place. You don't want them to glance over and see you slumping or not holding your core tight or something like that. So if they can see you, if you can see them, they can see you. When you're being judged, if you're on the diagonals and you're waiting to be called out, again, make sure you're in your pose, make sure you're angling. You should always be angling towards the head judge. One of the things I tell people is don't become the wilting flower. If you didn't get called out when you wanted to, don't, start pouting on the sidelines. Sometimes they're not done. Sometimes they are doing things in a different order. I mean, there was a time when, at the night show, they switched from doing the first call outs first and the last call outs last. They flipped it. So they do the last call out for the confirmation round for the pros. So you just never know. So just when you're on stage, keep the smile on your face, keep your core in tight, keep your pose, keep your angles, and just have fun. Be present. Really. When I was on stage, I would just remind myself, hey, this is the moment you've worked so hard for. I want my pictures to be beautiful. One other thing, while I'm thinking about prejudging, we've seen this quite a bit where people don't get all the way out to the square. This is super important for your pictures. There's a box on the stage, or an X. It's usually a box, and that's where you're wanting to do your presentation in. Make sure you get to that box. If you're in the call outs, there's a line that you're going to be standing on. Make sure you're standing on the line. So this is where us talking about going ahead of time, so you already know where the stage is and what to expect, is really important. But just make sure that you know where you're going and what you're doing. There's always going to be an expediter there with you before you step on stage, and usually they're going to give you some instructions. They're going to let you know, okay, we're wanting you to go out to the box, we're wanting you to do a front and back. So, just pay attention to the instructions, pay attention to the stage, and then go out there and just shine and have fun.
And let's do an FSA. I just made that up, fitness service announcement, like a public service announcement. If you're an amateur athlete and you are watching the pros pose, I understand that that's inspirational. That's your goal. That's where you want to be. And the posing criteria and flexibility for a pro is different than an amateur. So I've seen some amateur athletes walk to the back of the stage and then walk forward instead of walking directly to the box. And the problem with that, and because they see the pros do it, the problem with that is that the backstage may not be well lit. It takes time off your presentation, especially if it's a larger show where they're limiting you to that time. When you become a pro, then pose in that criteria. But right now in the amateurs, think about your bigger goal. And your bigger goal is, hey, I want to get to that box. I want to show the judges what I got. I'm going to stick my poses as simply and as effortlessly and gracefully, excuse me, and then I'm going to get off. And what you said about being on the stage, man, until the awards are presented, you are still in it. And I don't care whether you're in the last call out of a multiple call out show, your attitude, your mental state should be, I'm in it until they give the awards. Let the judges do what they're going to do. Your job is to present yourself. And we see this all the time with athletes, is that they will tell themselves, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous. If you are telling yourself that is exactly what you're going to be. We talked a long time ago about neuro-linguistic programming and how the words that you use relative to yourself matter. Nervousness is just energy. And you have the choice about whether you want to call it nervousness or whether you want to call it excitement. And just making that mental shift of I am nervous to I'm excited can make the difference between presenting tentatively and lack of confidence to presenting confidently and really projecting that positivity and that energy that you want to give to the judges, because it does make it. We see it every weekend. We see it every weekend that we're at a show where an athlete will get on stage and they'll pose tentatively, or you can tell that they're nervous, and that's what comes out in their posing is that they're nervous. You want to project that positivity, that confidence, that, hey, I've worked hard for this physique. Look at me. Okay. Which is what you want to do.
Right. As an amateur, you get 15 to 20 seconds. As a pro, you get 50 to 60 seconds.
Big difference.
It's a big difference. And quite honestly, the less time you're up on that stage, the less opportunities they have to find flaws.
That's right.
So you want to utilize that time to only show your very best angles and then get out of there, So
as we talked about, the judges are not looking for what's right with you on stage.
Right. So and the pros have that challenge of, they're up there for longer and they have to make sure, but they've also been usually doing this a bit longer, right. And they've had, that kind of thing. So I'm glad that you brought up the time and, and that kind of thing. And I think we should kind of jump into, okay, prejudging is over. At that point, you're not done. You still got finals. Every show's a little different. There are some that go right into finals afterwards, which I love.
We do. We all love that. That's a COVID carryover, and it's a great carryover. Yeah.
So some do that, and you want to know that ahead of time if they do, and then you've got your meals, and you just kind of keep cruising along. But if they do have a separate night show, which is the majority of shows, you sometimes are going to have 3 to 5 hours potentially between. This is not the time to go and have your, I finished my show meal.
God, you say that, and we're both laughing because we have seen athletes.
I've done it.
We have seen athletes who go between prejudging and finals, and they will eat, and they'll eat a lot. And it is a food baby on stage. Mm-hmm. It really, and that is not what you want to present. And I think operating in this business is in this industry, in this lifestyle, and again, bodybuilding's not life, but how you show up here can be how you show up everywhere. We've talked about how you do anything is how you do everything. Man, you do not want to show up like that. You just don't. And you also don't want to not show up for finals, which a lot of athletes do. And I just never understood that, because part of what you're going to the show for is to get that feedback from the judges. So you want, and carrying on the thought about eating between prejudging and finals is, do you want the last image that judge who's giving you feedback of you to be that you have a food baby because you went to grab 3 burgers and fries and a milkshake between prejudging and finals? That's not what you want to leave them with.
Well, I could tell a funny story.
Do it.
So my very first show, prejudging was over, and I asked my coach, what could I have, to eat? And he was kind of like, whatever. And so I wish he wouldn't have said that, but so I was like, how about if I go have ribs? Do you remember that?
I do.
So we go to this place and we have ribs, and it didn't even occur to me what was going to happen to my makeup. I looked like a mime after I was done because I had, I had like all the tan makeup off. So we ended up having to go to the drugstore and purchase some makeup so I could patch it up again. And, and of course I, had a harder time holding my waist in tight. So I learned it right off the bat. This is not a good idea. Guys, the food isn't going anywhere. Stick with your prep food, stick with your plan till the finals are over. Then you can go enjoy your meal. We'll talk about that meal when we kind of get to the post show, but just, stay professional, stay there. It's a matter of hours. I know we're hungry and, we're excited to enjoy something post show, but my advice would be stick with your prep food till you're done with finals.
And I think just based on our time, because we're over time right now, let's talk about post show as a separate episode. You good with that?
Well, since we're on
Okay.
show day,
Okay.
I do at least want to make sure that we talk about, I mean, you had mentioned getting feedback. Let's just talk a little bit about finals.
Fair.
Same thing for finals that we do for prejudging. Let's make sure we're there early. Finals typically does go faster than prejudging, although it depends on how many divisions that pose are going up, because and whether or not they're letting top 5 or top 10 pose. So there is variation in that. So just be there, be ready to go. All the same things apply with the pump up, being backstage, being present, being aware, go out there, have fun, get your award, congratulate the people beside you. I know sometimes we don't get the placing we want, we're disappointed, but it feels really good when you can congratulate somebody and be a good sport. So I would really encourage that. And then, feedback, guys. Like, some of the judges, first of all, let me just say, these judges a lot of times have full-time jobs outside of judging. So when they're getting hundreds of emails after the show, like, it's really hard for them to get back to all of them. What tends to be easier is if the judges are staying after to give feedback, get in line. Plus, you're fresh in their mind. You're still standing there in your posing suit. Sometimes they'll have you, let me see that pose again. Let me see if what I have written down for your feedback is correct. So take advantage of that. And I mean, I know people are like tired and hungry and family are waiting for them, but if you plan for this in advance, that way your family knows, maybe you don't do your post-show meal that night because it's too late when the show ends and you want to get feedback. You could do it the day after or something like that.
Brunch is a great way to celebrate.
Absolutely. Yeah. But guys, like, if you've worked this hard, unless it was a one and done and you want to keep competing, find out what the judges saw, what they want to see you work on. I mean, I've even had people tell me, well, my coach told me not to get feedback because my coach said they already know. Well, if you didn't just win the show, then there was something missing. Like, you need to know from the judge's standpoint what it is. And I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes I'm surprised by the feedback. Maybe they saw something that I didn't see. So take advantage of that. Learn from the experience.
That's to take the ego out of this and not assume that you know everything.
Exactly. So you'll learn something. Plus, you'll make a new connection. A lot of times when you're waiting in line, you'll get to chat and get to know other people. So make it fun. But stay after if the judges are giving feedback. And you can ask during the seminar or during the athlete meeting, will the judges be staying after? So that if they're not, then that way you're not wasting your time waiting to the end. So I would suggest asking that question. And so that way, if they are staying, then do it. And if they say no, they're not going to be staying, then at that point ask, who can I email for feedback? So find that out, during one of those 2 times, so you're prepared to get your feedback post show.
And I want to go back to something you said that I think is really important, which is keep your posing suit on, or keep your suit, your competition suit on, if you can. I mean, and the reason for that is that we've seen this happen many times where you go up in front of the judge, they may have your number, and if it's a bigger show too, if there's 200-300 people in that show, even if there's 100 people in the show, they've seen all these bodies multiple times, and so having your posing suit on and just saying, okay, this is what I look like. Sandy does this almost every show where you'll just pop the robe off and she'll take a look at you, and then she can get that closer look. It really is helpful. If you absolutely cannot continue to wear that suit for whatever reason, I would suggest that you have photos ready. A lot of times, Jam, man, he's just amazing at getting photos up on NPC News online. So a lot of times your pictures will be posted on NPC News, and you can have those at the ready, which I highly recommend, because that allows you to contextualize the feedback that the judge is giving. Hey, this is what I look like on stage. Oh yeah, now I remember. So if you can have that, if they allow you to take photos in the audience and you have a family member there, to have them take the photographs, whatever you can do to just be prepared as you're going up for that feedback. I know some people will record it, some people will take notes of it, but you want to have that feedback. It's not going to be it's not going to be a novel. It's going to be a few items. Hey, you could be tighter here, you could be tighter there. And as you're getting that feedback, also ask for clarifying questions. If they say, and maybe this is part where we need to go more in depth on this, but when a judge tells you need to be fuller, make sure you're asking, okay, does Does that mean I need more muscle? Does that mean I need more body to my muscles? Does that mean I need less conditioning? You need to get it clear in your head so that when you're walking away, you know exactly what that judge saw so that you can then apply that for your next physique.
Right. Don't be afraid to ask questions is what you're saying.
Right.
And I do think we could do a whole episode on interpreting, feedback and things like that. So I know we're running out of time.
Yep.
Let's just close it out by saying that, then you're going to go for your post-show meal, whether that be going out with friends and family or you're going to be going home and relaxing. I would have this planned in advance as much as possible. My biggest piece of advice is just watch the sugar.
Yeah.
A lot of times, as I know the promoters are wanting to do something nice for you guys, and sometimes they'll have cookies or donuts or, other things, I would forego that and get some actual food in your stomach, even if it's something, you've been craving pizza, burgers, whatever. It could be something that's, not diet types of food, but just watch the sugar. If you want to have something sweet, save it till after you've got some food in your stomach so you're not spiking your insulin. That's going to crash. You're going to start the cravings and it's going to be harder to rein in that appetite. If you're
prioritize protein.
Right. If you're going to go to another show or just go into an improvement season, either way, you want to kick that off in a good, healthy, positive way. And that's going to start with that post-show meal. So, a lot of people will do sushi or something that's not quite as, and one other thing, watch the alcohol, because I've seen people actually get sick and be uncomfortable and miserable by, going and having alcohol or a lot of heavy desserts or things like that. So just be smart about it. The food is not going anywhere.
Right.
It's going to be there the next day, the next day, the next day. You don't have to eat it all. Don't hoard your food. Don't bring a ton of, goodies with you. I mean, just be conscientious and smart, and let your friends and family know too, because sometimes they want to do a good thing for you, and then they bring you a bunch of, sweets and things like that, and that's not what you need at that point.
And I will emphasize this: prioritize your protein, because if you get some protein in you, it will help with your satiation. Your cravings for sugar will diminish. So prioritize protein. Whatever you have to do to get that protein in, jerky, get the meat in first, or whatever protein source that you prefer. If you get that in, that will help. And as we go full circle with the preparations for this, as you're preparing for the show and you're packing for the show, man, we've seen athletes carry bags of candy, cupcakes, cookies, all those things that they think they want. Just don't. Don't. As we say, the best way to avoid temptation is avoid temptation. If you pack it, there's going to be that instinct that you're going to have to eat it. So just pack accordingly. It's better to pack a protein source that you can fill yourself with and satiate. The sweets are not going anywhere. They don't taste any better that day. You think they will, but they don't. And if you get sick from it because you've overloaded on it, that's just not that's going to be a really bad experience for you.
So I would, but so what you said is so relevant. Have a snack with you that's not garbage, because when you're waiting for feedback, if you do at least have a little something that you can snack on, then it's going to help you from, first of all, not wanting to stay for feedback because you're hungry,
right.
but also not going to the garbage foods and things like that. So I think that's really good advice to have a little snack with you, whether it might even just be a protein bar or something, just something that you can have right off the bat, just to kind of help you feel, pretty good while you're getting that feedback. And then you can go and enjoy your meal out and have a steak, or have, I have a lot of people that'll do like a chicken salad or something just super fresh and that kind of thing. That's just something they wouldn't eat on prep, but it's, but at the same time, it's something they can enjoy.
And I will say this about protein bars: they do fill a role and they can have application. And I also remember an experience you had at a show where between prejudging and finals, you went and sampled a bunch of the protein bars, which you had not been eating at any time during your prep, and you had a reaction to that, and it really upset your stomach, and it was not a pleasant thing for you. So if there are protein bars at the show, and you think, hey, I'm going to pick one of those up to satiate myself to wait for feedback, okay, just be mindful that if you've not eaten that before, your body can react to that. So
I'm so glad you brought that up. And I meant to talk about that earlier when we were talking about between prejudging and finals, because you're absolutely right.
And it was just little bites too. That was the funny part.
It's the sugar alcohols that caused some bloating for me on stage. So I wouldn't eat that between prejudging and finals. And, and like you said, like if you're going to do it after, I would just eat one that that's the point. Yeah. Yeah. Because like I for example, I cannot eat a Quest bar. It's just going to tear up my stomach. And that's just
But many people people can.
But some people can,
Yeah.
so I'm going to choose like the one bars work well for me. And again, like I'm not a big protein bar person, but in a pinch, it can be really, really helpful and handy to have, and in this particular case.
Granola bars are great too. Yeah.
Something like that.
And some
really
of those
good too.
have protein in them. So yeah.
Yeah. Like a Kind bar or something like that.
We have gone way over time.
We have, but
this is an exciting topic, and we're right in the mode of this. So I hope that our passion and enthusiasm is coming through for this, because it's really exciting to think about show day. It is the culmination of your work. It is the reason why we do this stuff. And when you think about it relative to everything else that you're doing, it's such a small part, but it is the culmination of that work. So being prepared is really the way to make it a successful experience for yourself.
Yeah. So hopefully the tips we gave you are going to help you be prepared and help you enjoy and get the most out of your show day. And we'll come back with more tips.
And if you want to see more on this topic, the way to do that is like, subscribe, comment, and leave a review. And that's how we are able to carry forward other topics. So I think we're done for this one. And remember the 3 B's: be good to yourself,
be good to each other,
and be safe. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBodyFusion.